Hello, this is Pastor Stan Lubeck. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to be reviewing the book Finishing Well by Bob Buford. This is a book summary. The subtitle of the book is What People Who Really Live Do Differently. I love that subtitle. So Bob Buford was the founder of Leadership Network and the author of the bestseller Halftime. Bob inspired those who were successful in the first half of life to consider living for significance during the second half of life. In this book, Bob interviewed 120 extremely capable, high-profile leaders. He included names you would recognize such as Peter Drucker, Dallas Willard, Ken Blanchard, and Jim Collins. Many of these are people of faith, modeling highly energetic, disciplined, incurably positive, and highly influential lives. Buford's primary quest is what a 45-year-old needs to learn to finish well in life. He wanted to find the pioneers, the pathfinders, the leaders ahead of us in this new territory. Buford was obsessed with helping those who have experienced success in business but haven't yet found significance in life. Here are some priceless quotes from this timeless book as a summary of the book and an inspiration to read the entire book. These quotes are worth pondering and reviewing regularly. You will benefit most reviewing these quotes on a regular basis. Consider sharing a link with your associates and friends for significant conversations. You might even consider pausing this video at times to let the quote sink into your heart as you consider how to best apply it in your unique setting. Peter Drucker comments the most important thing about our time in history will not be technology, but for the first time, substantial numbers of people have choices. For the first time, they will have to manage themselves. Odds are you'll live a whole adult lifetime that wasn't available to your parents and grandparents. Think about that. The hard thing is to pray for God's will to be done in your life, that you'll know it when it comes, and that you'll be strong enough to go out and follow it. Thank you, Tom Luce. I have no problem with money, power, fame, or status, as long as they're treated as resources rather than as goals in themselves. But that's precisely the problem for most people. Tom Morris. People with a hopeful, forward-looking, confident attitude will find that things are different in their lives. They're upbeat, they're more physically fit, they're generally happier. Knowing God and believing that there's a plan and a purpose for our lives should fill us with joy. Dallas Willard. Devote the rest of your life to doing those things which you know to be good and profitable for humanity. And that means especially for human beings who live around you. Dallas Willard. I think the critical difference between success and significance is that success has more to do with outcomes I'm in charge of, while significance has more to do with outcomes I'm not in charge of. The beautiful thing about significance is that we resign the outcomes to God, and we let a power beyond ourselves take care of them. Success is focused on my action and my control, my outcomes, whereas significance is found in a much larger context. I'm not running that context, and the step of surrender is crucial because surrender allows me to release the outcome. Wally Hawley states, I didn't retire, I just redeployed. For me, that's what it means to finish well. What really changed was that it went from being about me to being about others. Bennett says, the most satisfying thing for me is the relationships. Bennett also says, I was really drawn toward the light when I began practicing the spiritual disciplines, starting each day a little more slowly and making a clear space in my life to hear the voice of God. Finishing well is a continuous process of becoming a better vessel for God's purposes. How do you figure out what God is telling you? I listen. Most of us are so busy we can't hear God's will. I listen. Wilson Good. Peter Drucker says, knowing your strengths and weaknesses is essential. When you know who you are, you can be comfortable making decisions about what you want to do and where. One has to learn what to say no to. Dan Sullivan says, really great answers tend to close things down, while really great questions open things up. So my basic approach to life is to collect really great questions. Dan Sullivan also says in order to restore some vitality and excitement in your life, you must have a higher purpose. You've got to pour yourself into a larger, overriding goal that will occupy your time and talents. Creative retirement. Retire from everything you dislike doing and focus on what you love doing. The core is the immovable center of who you really are. It's the equipment your Creator has issued to you, the mental, physical, and emotional tools you've got to work with, as well as your experiences and deepest passions. Two things have to come together. The first is discovering that secret sauce and the special part about you that God created. The second is deciding how to use it. Toward what end? Toward making the world a better place? Toward something with much bigger and larger purpose? I define significance as using your knowledge and experience to add value to the lives of others. If you were at the end of your life looking back at where you are now, what would have had to happen for you to feel good personally and professionally about your life? Bob Buford. Kim Blanchard says, driven people think it's all up to them. Called people understand that life and work are gifts of God's grace. Ken also says, get under God's agenda and out from under your own. Success is all about getting. Significance is about giving back. Margie Blanchard says, it is hard to discover what is going to be the most important and fulfilling in the future. Ferret out the one or two recurring themes that have satisfied you in your life stages. The coffee cup slogan of this book, it's all about relationships. The most meaningful work is that which involved helping other people. Sharing your wealth through charitable giving and philanthropy is important, but sharing your knowledge is every bit as important. It's the opposite of fame and fortune, but it has lasting significance. I've often said, the fruit of my work grows on other people's trees. Armand Nicholi. Joy has more to do with being in alignment with your task or assignment from God, and being in a right relationship with Him and your significant others, than with your sense of personal gratification or happiness. First, life during the retirement years needs to be free of the stresses we experience during our working life. Second, the tasks we undertake during these years need to be meaningful work that benefits other people, or, and this is critical, another person. And third, it needs to be fun. Fun is like a green light on your control panel. It tells you that you're in the right zone. More often than not, money and achievement are cul-de-sacs or dead ends and represent temptation's obstacles. Dick DeVos says, I tried not to let myself get trapped emotionally or financially in the organization. Even when you guard against it, the power and the self-image you feel in top leadership can become almost addictive. When you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, it's like writing with the wrong hand. You can do it, and after a while you can get pretty good at it, but it's always awkward. But when you find the sweet spot, what you were created to do, it's like putting the pen back in the hand where it belongs. Tom Wilson. Tom Tierney says, what keeps most of us from focusing on the things that matter is all the things that don't matter, but add cost. Particularly the cost is our most precious asset, time. Build a life, not a resume. Create a stop doing list, says Jim Collins. One of the greatest opportunities of life, too, is to be a cheerleader for a younger person, or even a peer, to bless their plans, to give them legitimacy. Nobody remembers the halftime score, where you stand at the end of the game, is what really matters. Significance happens when we enable those around us to discover their own significance. Earl Palmer. Why people in the Bible didn't finish well? The thinking that surfaced over and over was a failure, not in their knowledge of Scripture, but in failing to apply Scripture in their lives. There has to be somebody to ask significant questions, to hold us accountable. If you stop learning today, you'll stop growing tomorrow. Your career is what you're paid to do. Your calling is what you're made to do. Howard Hendricks. Repurposing. Adopting a new purpose through which you can still express your core values and employ your native skills. What's in the box? What is central to your life at this point? Is there If there is room for only one thing in the box, what is it? Identifying what's in the box frames everything. It's about changed lives, Ali Hanna. I ask myself, what am I supposed to do today? And what will contribute to the most benefit from what I'm supposed to do today? Lord, I can't do anything about yesterday, and tomorrow may not come. Let me be your man today. Vester Hughes. Larry Allums says, what gets me up each morning is the whole prospect of building something that will last beyond my own life. Once you know your core, you need to find the context that brings forth the best from your unique gifts and abilities. At level 5 leadership, the top performers are 1, genuinely humble, and 2, fully devoted to the mission. Jim Collins. 2 final questions. This is from Bob Buford. What did you do about Jesus? And then secondly, what did you do with what I gave you to work with? What I'm most intrigued by is the degree to which, step by step, Solomon accommodated himself to the culture around him, to the point that he ended up walking away from God. And I ask myself, how much can we accommodate ourselves to the culture and the people we love and are trying to influence? Solomon indulged in the same excesses they did, and he became little different from those outside the covenant. Dennis Beausejour. Finishing well to me primarily means that I want more than anything to be found obedient and faithful. The parts of the brain that are focused on the things we love remain resilient and vibrant into late old age. That's good news. His role models, Peter Drucker, Billy Graham, are still relevant in their thinking, their conversations, and in the way they live. They're not thinking in the past. Peter is constantly priming his mind with current events and topics of interest, and he has an uncanny way of relating those things to what has occurred in history. He puts today's topics into a context of what's gone on before. Bill Pollard. A paradox. On one hand, modern medicine gives us more years, a much longer life. But on the other hand, American culture puts so much stress on youth not becoming obsolete, being innovative, and always being up on the latest technology that it makes old age seem irrelevant much sooner. We live longer, but we're made to feel obsolete much sooner, which is unfortunate. And finally, Os Guinness says we can retire from our jobs, but we can never retire from our calling. Okay, that's it. Thanks for coming. God's best to you. Bye for now.